finally understood how they're supposed to be. Some other name worked on a transition. They're trying to spell something from,
We're good. Are you on?
Yep.
You ready?
Live.
you gotta turn on the mic.
Hi, Pam.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I was going to have a 10-minute prepared talk, but Debbie said that I should just introduce the chairpeople of our Mercaz committee, who have done an amazing job. And you know them, I hope, Charlie and Kim Light. Come on, Charlie.
Well done.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Blame it on me. I know.
We, the conservative or Masorti Jews, have a voice in World Zionist Congress and its affiliated organizations through the political party Mercaz. The Congress, established by Theodore Herzl, is the only democratic body representing Jews worldwide. It controls significant nonprofits with more than $2 billion in annual allocation. Voting for Mercaz in the elections for Congress held every 5 years is essential for securing funding to promote diversity and strengthen Masorti Judaism in Israel. This support benefits our synagogues and our programs. This is building a future for our children and grandchildren that develops a sense of belonging to the Jewish people, a deep engagement and love for Israel, and a commitment to inspired Jewish living through meaningful and fun experiences based on the ideology of conservative Judaism. The Congress ensures those resources support those most impacted by numerous recent tragedies, as well as combat anti-Semitism and promote values like equality in Israel. Every 5 years, Jews from around the globe have the opportunity to select delegates to the World Zionist Congress who will represent our conservative Jewish values in the allocation of billions of dollars in funding. Last time, only 2%, or 125,000 Jews, American Jews, voted. As often happens in politics, when there is a small voter turnout, the extreme parties get the larger representation. We let others who didn't know our values and vision for Israel's future make the decisions for us. The vast majority of American Jews believe in Jewish and democratic Israel that welcomes everyone. Israel and Jews around the world face immense and potentially debilitating challenges. Voting for Mercaz gives our values a voice in determining the direction of the decisions of the World Zionist Congress for Jews of Israel and the diaspora. Next, it is my honor to welcome Debbie Goldich, who will introduce Dr. Yizhar House. Ms. Goldich is a member of Congregation North Zion. She's a board member of Masorti Olami, the international umbrella organization for Masorti Judaism, and is on the Mercaz slate, number 17,
Yay.
at the World Zionist Congress.
Oh, thanks, Charlie and Kim, for all you're doing. So, good afternoon to everybody. For those of you in the room and those of you online, we don't know how many of you are there, but I know you're there. And as Charlie said, I'm Debbie Kainer-Goldich, and I am on the board of Masorti Olami, which is the official international movement of Masorti, or conservative Jews, all over the world. And the organization represents 70,000 Jews in 140 communities and 5 continents. So, as Charlie said, the Mercaz slate, the purpose of it is to bring pluralistic, egalitarian, and relevant Jewish practice to Israel with Masorti Judaism. And today, we're very honored that our guest is Dr. Yizkar Hess, and it's pretty impressive that he's here, I have to say. So he served as the executive director of the Masorti movement in Israel between 2007 and 2020. And since 2020, he serves as the vice chairman of the World Zionist Organization. And he was elected to that role as a representative of Mercaz, which is the conservative Masorti voice. And it is the Zionist slate of the Masorti movement. So you can read his bio online. It's pretty long and impressive, but I'll share with you that he earned a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a law degree, and PhD. And Dr. Hess had represented the conservative Masorti movement in the negotiations with the Israeli government regarding the egalitarian prayer of the Kotel Wall, which is really impressive, and we thank women. Thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Hess is a 10th generation Jerusalemite. Yes, and he lives in Modi'in with his wife Yael. Get this, she's a former IDF colonel, and your children. So we thank you. Yizkar, we welcome you to Congregational Zion and to Arizona.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. It is a privilege to be here. And thank you, Kim and Charlie, for what you do. It's really impressive. And I'm not sure, Debbie, if Phoenix knows what a leader they gained when you moved to Phoenix. I feel in a way at home here because for 3 years we were living. I'll hold it.
Yeah.
For 3 years we were living in Arizona. I was the community shaliach in Tucson. So I really feel at home here, and I'm so happy to see an old friend, Rabbi Bob Eisen, who was the rabbi of Kilat Anshe Israel in Tucson, and a congregation that I cherish and speak about quite a lot. I'd like to open my remarks with something that I think is inevitable. You know, it's 529 days since October 7th. 529 days. We count the days, we count the hours, we count the seconds. Still 59 hostages are being held in Gaza. And it's 529 days that I thank God for the fact that my son Achiad was not in Israel on October 7th. Achiad is a student at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He's 28 years old. It was the last week of the summer vacation, and he was trekking in Nepal. He didn't hear anything that Shabbat, not on Motzei Shabbat, not even on Sunday, because he was in a place with no internet, only in Sunday evening. On Sunday evening, he reached the guest house, he met a few Israelis, learned about the atrocities in the southern part of Israel, and from that moment on, did whatever he could to make his way home. So he walked for a day till he reached the nearest road, and then rented a Jeep in a ridiculous price, rented a Jeep. 10 hours, bumpy road, reached an airport, took a plane to the capital of Nepal, bought a ticket to Israel via Mumbai, India, only to discover that in order to fly via India, you need an Indian visa, which he didn't have. So we had to toss that ticket, bought another one, this time via the Emirates, landed in Israel on Yom Hamishi, on Thursday morning. Yael, my wife, and I waited for him at the airport, took him home, a decent meal, a quick shower, and he rushed to his unit. For 8 months, Achiad was in Gaza. And thank God that Ahiyad was not in Israel on October 7th. I know my son. He served in a special unit in the army. He would have rushed to his unit that Shabbat morning, would have put his hands on whatever rifle he could, and would have gone to the Gaza envelope to save as many civilians, to protect as many villages. According to the statistics of that Shabbat, the majority of soldiers who did what I just described, meaning soldiers that were not in duty and just rushed and whatever, the majority of them did not make it to Motzei Shabbat, did not survive. So we thank God that our Ahiyad was not in Israel on October 7th. Unfortunately, this is not the case for so many other Israeli families. 529 days. It's the longest war that Israel ever had since its establishment. And if you would visit Israel, and I'm sure that some of you visited Israel since October 7th, if you would have visited Israel, you would have felt it's a different country. The vibe in the streets is different. You see places are open, but you don't see tourists. You feel the heaviness. It's hard to breathe some days, not because of the weather. Even on private simchas, you feel it. It's a different playlist. The volume is different. In so many ways, Israel is still on October 7th. We did not reach October 8th yet. It will take us time, first of all, to bring back the hostages, and secondly, we would need to thoroughly investigate and to cope with what happened to us on October 7th. How come we were caught so off guard? How come this hubris kind of feel that popped us? To feel that everything is okay in the southern border, a political huge mistake of governments that thought that you can buy peace with money, and the lack of professionalism, to say it very mildly, of the IDF and the intelligence services that weren't prepared enough to what happened to us that day. That wasn't that sophisticated. Okay, it's not like a rocket science what happened there. It's a very simple and blunt kind of attack. So we are not on October 8th yet, and we are counting 2 minutes to be there. Now, if you take October 7th, that was a disaster, and still is up until today. It all started on October 7th, 2023. Well, let's remind ourselves that October 6th was not a paradise either. Do you remember October 6th, the 10 months prior to October 7th? When the Israeli society was torn with the judicial reform that our duly elected government introduced, and with the majority of the people of Israel, according to the polls, who felt that it's too much. That it's indeed a duly elected government, but it was introduced before the elections. It puts at risk the democratic nature of Israel, and so many Israelis were every week in the streets. 10% of the Jewish population in Israel demonstrating on the night, it was a Wednesday, when Minister Gallant was fired for the first time. It was 700,000 Israelis. 700,000 Israelis, it's like 10% of the Jewish population in Israel. Take it to American terms, like 35 million Americans in the streets. Every junction. Now, I'm thinking on the Israel of October 7th, of October 8th, when we'll get there. What kind of things we can take from this miserable 529 days since October 7th, and from the 10 months prior to October 7th, what can we take to find comfort, and that would help us build the Israel of October 8th? And I'd like to share with you 2 points that I found. From the last 525 days, 29 days, I'm taking the spirit of voluntarism that we faced on the first few months of the war, when our government did not function. Okay, it's not a secret, it didn't function in any aspect. And the civil society took over. You could have seen so many voluntarism, every corner that you looked, that it filled me pride. Filled me pride. As an Israeli, to see, it's like the spirit of Israel all over again, something that really made me proud. I think that we will need it on October 8th. For the 10 months prior to October 7th, I would like to take something that was so different in this wave of demonstrations. And you know what it was? It was the emblem. The emblem of the demonstrations. Remember what was it? If you remember, think about the pictures that you saw from the demonstrations. It was the flag. So many Israeli flags. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Israeli flags that the demonstrators held in their hand. It's as if, authentically, people felt that when you try to change the democratic nature of the state of Israel, you authentically go back to the basics, to the blue and white flag that we all love, to the blue and white flag almost identical to the one that Theodor Herzl introduced on stage in the first Zionist Congress. And I think that that first Zionist Congress is so relevant to the Israel of October 8th. Now let's go for a second for the first Zionist Congress. The first Zionist Congress was when? 1897. 1897. Where was it convened? Basel, Switzerland. Basel, Switzerland. Why Basel? Do we know? From all places? Neutral. It is neutral, but it's not necessarily the reason. What else? See, many of us remember Basel, okay? But just if you know that Herzl did not want Basel. Herzl back then was the political correspondent of the Neue Freie Presse. The Neue Freie Presse was the intellectual newspaper of Europe. The most known, it was so prestiged that some people in Europe, on their business card, wrote a subscriber of the Neue Freie Presse. This is how prestige this publication was. And Herzl was the political correspondent, based in Paris, columns every week, you know. He knew Europe well. And he knew, and it's for you, Alan Silverman, that the right place to have the convention is in Munich, where your family came from Munich. He wanted Munich, Germany. Munich was posh and intellectual and cosmopolitan. Munich was the place, he thought. Well, he couldn't have it in Munich. Excuse me, rabbis who sit there. Because of the rabbis. All of them. From Reform to Orthodox, including the beginning of conservative Judaism as well, all of them signed a proclamation that was sent to the municipality of Munich with a demand to ban the option of having this radical convention, dangerous convention of Jews who think that the Jewish people should have sovereignty in Palestine. So ridiculous, so dangerous. Not in our backyard, they basically said. And they were successful. Herzl did not want to pick this fight. And he set his sights and moved to Basel. Now Basel is there anyone who visited Basel? By chance? Oh, what did you do in Basel?
It's beautiful town.
Right. Okay, you know, Basel is indeed not a place that many tourists go to, so thank you for going to Basel. If you go to Basel, where did you sleep? Do you remember?
We didn't.
Oh, just pass through. If you are in the neighborhood, in Europe, in Switzerland, try to have a night in Basel and try to sleep in the Three Kings Hotel. Three Kings Hotel, this is where Herzl spent his time in Basel. And today it's a functioning hotel, a very fancy schmancy one, but not unaffordable, okay? Like 400 euros a night would buy a room. And it's worthwhile because if you reserve it way in advance, you can book the room that Herzl slept in with a plaque. This is the room. Now, it's so famous not because of the bed. I'm sure that they changed it. But it's because of the balcony. This is the balcony where Herzl stood. Remember this picture that was taken? That's the place. So try to visit Basel. Herzl arrived to Basel just a few days before the Congress, and he was very nervous. He came in a train from Paris. And he writes in his diary how nervous he was because he didn't see the venue that he rented. Back then, if you had to organize something, you didn't have a website that you could log in and see how it looks. He had to do it in an old-fashioned way, snail mail or telegram, or who knows. And he was nervous because he knew that the venue matters. It's not only the content. Content-wise, he was quite relaxed. He wrote his book, The Jewish State, the Judenstaat, start, just a year before the Congress. Everyone read it, so he was quite relaxed when it came to the content. He was very nervous about the venue, and indeed, he came to see the venue and canceled the reservation. And booked another place, the Stad Casino, that's the name, Stad Casino. It's not a casino. It's an old, like, European oakish kind of theater with red velvet on the cushions, and you can imagine how it looks. And for the next 3 days, Herzl, and in a second we'll understand why, was working on the decor. Where the flag would be, what would be its size, how the stage would look like, where will people sit. He took care of each and every iota. And why? Because from his professional experience he knew that it's not only the content that matters, it's also the way it looks. And he knew it because his true passion was not journalism. Some say that he surrendered to journalism. His true passion was theater. Herzl was a playwright. He wrote 16 full plays. Some of them were even staged. One of his plays played in the book theater in Vienna for 15 years. So he was a successful playwright. So he knew that theater is also the drama and the film. He wanted to give people who came to the Congress the new feel of a Jewish parliament. He wanted to create an ambiance that would be as far as possible from a small room in somewhere in the shtetl, in the back room of a synagogue where 10 men gathered, spoke Yiddish and drank schnapps. Something that would be different, and he took care, again, of everything, including the dress code. If you would have been one of the 209 delegates that were invited for the first Zionist Congress, you would have to rent or buy a frock. You know what a frock is? It's the suit, like a tuxedo, the German tuxedo, with a long tail, high hat, cylinder, and a white bow tie. That's the dress code. And Herzl writes also in his diary, it was scheduled to be the opening ceremony, 10 a.m., Sunday morning, August 29th. Herzl is standing at the entrance, he writes. You can imagine Herzl, okay? Tall, slim, elegant as it could be, with his white dramatic beard. He stands at the end, with a cylinder, of course. He stands at the entrance, greeting people in a very royal way. And he sees, he writes that he sees his deputy. Now, I'm fond with his deputy in the First Zionist Congress, because today I sit on his chair. Back then, it was Dr. Max Nodo. Max Nodo, if you remember the Nodo Boulevard in Tel Aviv. So before it was a boulevard, it was a person. And he was a known philosopher, he was a physician. And Herzl sees his deputy, Dr. Max Nodo, approaches the venue, approaches the Stad Casino. And he was not dressed appropriately. He was with a light summer suit. It's August. Herzl approaches him. They had a little discussion. He sent him back to his hotel room to change. And he came back on time, and the Congress could start. Now, the First Zionist Congress, with 3 days of discussions, of deliberations, it was a success like no other. In spite of the fact that Herzl knew that many of the people that he invited to the Congress came to dispute him, did not come to agree with him. They read the book and they had reservations. Yet, almost all of them, 99.9%, 0.5%, because one of the people did not like Herzl didn't like him, it's Echad Ha'am, worth read about him and what happened there, but nevertheless, the vast majority of the people, even the ones who came to dispute Herzl, got the feeling that, you know what, via what we learned here, and via what we felt, it would be implementable. And they wrote in their diaries, in the articles that they published, and the op-eds in their diaries, everything, how successful it was. And it indeed became, the First Zionist Congress became a pivotal moment in the history of the Jewish people. Now, how come? What could happen in 3 days? So, no, it wasn't only the drama and the charisma that Herzl definitely had. It was content that drew people, and it was especially what Herzl did there. Herzl did not invent Zionism. Zionism began good 15 years before Herzl. But what Herzl did in the Congress, he politicized the Zionist idea. He politicized the Zionist movement. He introduced politics, talked about it both internally and externally, and convinced people that via the tool of politics, this idea of establishing a Jewish state could work. Now, come to think about it. Less than 50 years after Herzl passed away, at the young age of 44, just 7 years after the First Zionist Congress, just 50 years afterwards, the State of Israel was established. So why the success? In historical terms, it's nothing. In the history of political movements, it's nothing. So it was quite successful, the politicizing of the idea. But what was that politics? That politics was first and foremost democracy. In the First Zionist Congress, all the 209 invitees were, the people were invitees of Herzl. From the Second Congress on, you had to be elected. The homework, if you want, the homework that the delegates received upon concluding the First Zionist Congress, go back to your hometown, go back to your villages, to your cities, establish Zionist federations, have elections. And once you are elected, you are most welcome to come to the Second Zionist Congress. If not, tough luck. In order to be shliach tzibur, you need to have tzibur. In order to be a leader, you need to have a constituency. A key component of what democracy is. The second component that I'm even more proud of, I must tell you, is the fact that women had the right to vote and to get elected from the Second Congress on. When did women got the right to vote here in the US? 1917. You were a little later, I think, no? 1919 or 1920?
I think it was 1917.
1917 could be. In Canada a few years later. In France, 1945. What is the last democracy that gave women the right to vote and to get elected, do you know? Switzerland, indeed. 1972. So we were, Zionism, among the first political movements in the world that allowed women the right to vote. That's a reason to be proud. And yet another reason to be proud. One could say even that Zionism and democracy were born for the Jewish people in the very same time and the very same place. Now, when you get to understand the First Zionist Congress in Basel from that lens, from that perspective, I think it's all of a sudden becomes natural that in the middle of Milchemet HaAtzmaut, in the middle of the War of Independence, the leadership of the World Zionist Congress back then, David Ben-Gurion and his colleagues, the leadership was convened in Tel Aviv on Friday at noon of May 14, 1948, to sign the Declaration of Independence. The sole document that anchors the democratic nature of the state yet to be born. This is the document that stands for the soul of our country. Now, if you take these two dots in history, Basel of 1897, August 29th, and Tel Aviv, Israel, in May 14, on May 14, 1948, if you take these two dots in history, you'll see a thick line of democratic values that connects them together. And I think that this is the materials or the ethos that would help us build the Israel of October 8th that needs to be built. Now, when we'll get to October 8th, there are three dimensions or three pillars that I think that should be remembered and should be there, and we should work in order to strengthen them. One of them is, of course, it's the obvious thing, security. Okay, we learned that we are not protected enough. We need to invest more in Israel's security and brera. This is what needs to be done, both economically. The next decade, probably, the economy of the State of Israel would need to be subject to the growing needs of security. Also, if you follow the news now, the big dispute that you read about between Haredim and non-Haredim about drafting Haredim to the army, it's also because the IDF needs more manpower and women power, and it's inevitable. We got to the age that we need to have this conflict. So that's about security. no argument about this. The second is something that I do not want to neglect, although I'm not sure even that it's possible to discuss in honesty. I'm talking about peace with our neighbors. I do not want to neglect the hope. I do not think that we can neglect the hope of having peace with our neighbors. Now I know that paradigms of October 6th might be not relevant to October 8th. I get it. Yet, I think that we cannot let go of the hope, and we need to remind ourselves that only 5 years after the Yom Kippur War, only 5 years, President Anwar Sadat led it in Ben Gurion. Who would have thought in 1974 that such a thing could happen in 4 years, right? So who knows? Probably it would need a new leadership from our side, from their side. Definitely it won't be with Hamas, but who knows? Okay, sometimes strategies, have their ways to create paradigms that I won't neglect the hope of Zionism for peace. It is there from day one, and I do not want to be caught in thinking that every 10 years we'll have another vicious cycle of war and bloodshed because this is the nature of the... No, we need to work that it won't happen. So that's the second thing. Again, something that's worth mentioning, it's important. The third thing, the third pillar, in my eyes, is the most important one, and it has to do with Israel's democracy. We learned in the 10 months prior to October 7th that Israel's democracy is not secure enough. It is too fragile. We need more checks and balances. The fact that it was so easy for a duly elected government to change the nature of our regime, this is at least a good part of the majority felt, this is not healthy for any democracy. Okay, in order to make significant fundamental changes, you need a supermajority. That's the way to do it. This is the way you get amendments in your constitution. This is definitely something that we need to adopt in spite of the fact that we do not have, as we all know, a constitution. So the next government of Israel would need to enhance the democratic nature of who we are. I'm talking about the next government of Israel because I have not that many expectations with the current one when it comes to that. Okay, I'll say it mildly. It's a duly elected government, no doubt, but it's the most extreme government that Israel ever had. Ever had. With ministers like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that I'm ashamed that they are my ministers. What can I do? Okay, so democratically we need to work it in a better way. Israel's democracy is something that, of course, we all feel very proud of. Now, the majority of the things that are related to the reality that needs to be created on October 8th, it's our responsibility, Israelis. Yet, on the third pillar, the one that has to do with democracy, it's a joint venture. How many Jews have we in the world today? Do you know? So according to most demographers today, we are at 17. 17 million Jews in the world. 7.5 million Jews in Israel. We are 10 million Israelis. 7.5 of them are Jewish. 8 million Jews in North America. Canada and the US together. Although it might be a political statement, what I just said. So I'll say it differently. The two states, Canada and the US together, the Jewish population is about 8 million Jews. And another 2 million Jews in different parts of the world. The third largest Jewish community is France, with 500,000 Jews. Okay, that's the Jewish people. 7.5 million Jews, 8 million Jews, 2 million Jews all over. 17 million people, it's nothing. It's tiny. It's less than a third of 1% of humanity. It's nothing. Yet we have only one Jewish state, one nation state for the Jewish people, and it is the state of Israel. Now, I was raised from day one, really, from day one, as a toddler, that the state of Israel belongs, first and foremost, to the Israelis, Jews and non-Jews alike, but secondly, to each and every Jew who live outside of Israel. Each and every Jew, whatever he or she even think about, that they are stakeholders in Israel. This is how I was raised, like many other Israelis. So, you are stakeholders in Israel. And one of the ways to execute it is using the tool, the platform, that Theodor Herzl left us with. Theodor Herzl left us with the World Zionist Congress, the only democratic platform that represents Jews all over the world. This is the World Zionist Congress. A Congress, a parliament of the Jewish people with 525 delegates. Third of them from Israel. Third from the US jury. These are the elections that just started a week ago on March 10th here in the US. You can vote via the American Zionist Movement website and you can have your voice heard. And the other third is Jews from all over the world. There are 40 Zionist federations all over the world. Elections like we have in the US in different forms are being done now, are being conducted now in different parts of the world. Now, what happened to us in the last elections was a tragedy. It was a tragedy because only 120,000 Jews in North America, in the US voted. I represent, of course, Mercaz. Mercaz is the Masorti conservative slate to the Congress, number 17. This is the number. We got here in the US almost 15,000 votes. The Reform were a little better. They got 28 or 29,000 votes. Okay? You know who did well? The Haredi Orthodox. They were able to mobilize their people to vote in a way that stunned us. They were able to bring from 5 neighborhoods in the New York area only, okay, because this is where they ran the campaign, whatever, more than 20,000 votes. Now they joined the Zionist movement only in 2020, just for the Congress. For many years, for 120 years, they were against Zionism, the most, strong ideological opponents to Zionism. And they joined the Congress, according to their publications, not something that I'm inventing here, for one reason.
Outvote you.
To what?
To outvote you.
Exactly. Exactly. To push Reform and conservative Judaism from the only seat that they have in Israel. This is the seat of the World Zionist Congress. They were there. This is the haskamot, the approvals of their rabbis to join the Congress is to push Reform Judaism, and to push conservative Judaism, and to make sure that there is only one way to be Jewish, and that Jews of North America would also be represented by the authentic Jews' voice that there is. Now, it is significant because the tasks of the World Zionist Congress are dramatically important. We run the assets of the Jewish people, assets that belong to the Jewish people, not to the state of Israel, not to the government of Israel, assets that belong to the Jewish people. Our first asset that is known is the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency that runs programs all over the globe on behalf of the Jewish people. The Jewish Agency that sends shlichim to Camp Ramah, shinshinim to different communities. The Jewish Agency that its emissaries were sent when the war with Ukraine broke out just 3 years ago. It was the Jewish Agency emissaries on behalf of all of us that stood there on the border to help Jews to get a flight, to get a hotel room, to get a hot meal, a blanket. Natan Sharansky wrote about it, that it was the first war in history where it was better to be a Jew in the queue. Because we were there, the mishpacha was there to hold your hand. The Jewish Agency is important. It's an entity that has a budget of $500 million a year. The second asset, we have many assets, but I'm talking about the 2 big ones. By the way, the Jewish Agency, 50% of the Board of Governors is the Congress. Our second asset is way more important because of its budget. It's Keren Kayemet Israel, Jewish National Fund, JNF. Not to be confused with JNF USA, it's a different entity. Okay, I'm talking about JNF Israel, a much, much bigger company than you could imagine. Keren Kayemet Israel, JNF, in Israel was founded in 1901. It was the first crowdfunding campaign in the world. Okay, the blue box. It was founded in order to purchase land in Israel. And then that land was purchased, and today 17% of Israel is ours. Belongs to the Jewish people. 17% of the land, 1/7. This real estate bears fruit economically, okay? Rentals, developments, whatever. The revenue goes to Keren Kamat Israel's budget. We have a budget on the Keren Kamat Israel board per year that exceeds $2 billion. Huge sum of money. It's the biggest collective pot of money that the Jewish people have. Okay, it's 3 times more than all the campaigns of the Jewish Federations of North America together. It's the biggest NGO that the Jewish people have. And these elections are actually voting for the board of directors of a foundation that allocates every year $2 billion. In 5 years, $10 billion. You can imagine how powerful it is. The tragedy that we got last time brought us to be, for the first time since the establishment of the Zionist movement, from the first time since Herzl's time, the pluralistic side of Zionist thinking became a minority. For the first time. And it had ramifications. The Jewish Agency, for instance, this is the entity that oversees the Aliyah procedures. Okay, the eligibility for Aliyah. And today, on the Board of Governors of the Jewish Agency, there are Haredi Jews that were elected in a democratic way. Okay, their Judaism is not better than mine. My Judaism is not better than yours. They were elected democratically regardless of their motivations, and I respect it. Yet, according to their outlook, a Reform convert is not Jewish. A conservative convert is not Jewish. Now, this discourse was never part of what Zionism was. We were always the widest tent possible that engaged Jews in any form or way. Furthermore, the Jewish Agency and Keren Kamat Israel are the only source of funding for non-Orthodox Judaism in Israel. This is one of the motivations that got the Haredim coming into the Congress. Non-Orthodox Judaism, as we all know, is not recognized officially by the state. And of course it's not funded, in spite of the fact that state and religion are not separated in Israel. They are definitely not separated, and only one stream of Judaism is funded. And non-Orthodox movements, that was, and still is, thank God, the only source of funding. Now, this is risky for the future of the state of Israel. Because when you have $2 billion in your hands, you could do good things. You could do less of the good things. And as we know, in democracy, if you don't vote, you actually voted. Right? You actually voted. You give others the power to do what they want to do. And this is what we are doing now. We are fighting this apathy. We are trying. We have the numbers to win the elections. We have the numbers. We just need to awake. The two religious movements here in the U.S., the Reform Judaism, we encourage people that belong to Reform congregations to vote for ALSA. We encourage Masorti conservative congregations, congregants to vote for Mercaz. We are the only 2 slates that are running to the Congress that have no ties with any party in Israel. All the other slates, if you would check it thoroughly, it's, you need to be insider to know it, but all the other slates have ties to parties in Israel, and it means that the one who calls the shots at the end of the day would be the leaders of the parties in the Knesset. And the whole thing is to have world Jewry represented in the Congress. That's the nature of who we are. The fact that we are not connected to any party in the Knesset allows us to be way more ideological when it comes to political decisions. It's politics. It's nothing. We're used to talk about only values and texts and depth. In politics, what matters is how many people voted for you. This is how it works for every slate in any political system. This is what we have, for the good and for the bad. So this is what we are rallying for. I hope that today we will not only be voting together, anyone who didn't vote yet, by scanning this code and go RQ and going to vote, but also that you will be our ambassadors. Each and every one of you here have at least 10 people that with a simple phone call would agree to do what you asked him or her to do, right? We have those kinds of circles. It's important to you enough, you know what will do it. It costs only $5, you know what will do it. This is what needs to occur. Another person and another person and another person. Today, 4 Haredi slates are running to the Congress. 4, and not only in the US, also in Latin America and Europe. So there is a risk that the Zionist movement, that there will be a takeover on the Zionist movement, because they will be able to bring their people to vote, and others in the more pluralistic side of life would be hesitant because of various reasons, and always there are reasons. So I hope that in this group of people and on Zoom, we will have this support, and please help us and be ambassadors. I will stop here. We have just a couple of minutes for questions. Yes, Mr. Silberman.
No, thank you. You really educated me a lot about a lot. I knew a lot of what you said, but I didn't know a lot of what you said, so I really appreciate your presentation. My question is, I've been a member of conservative schools for at least 55 years. This is the first time.
Before you were born.
Believe me, coming out the copper. But this is the first time I ever even heard about these elections. Never ever heard about it in any school I ever lived in, and I've lived in 5 or 6 different
על חטא שחטאנו.
Why didn't I ever hear about these elections every 5 years?
It's a good question. I cannot, I want to take responsibility for that because, that's the thing. I wasn't necessarily involved in that way, but you're right, it's a shonda. This is something that we didn't do good enough. Remember, it's not that we have a campaign budget, we have, in television or whatever. This is what we have. We have the advantage that we have, Mercaz, is that in political terms, we at least have a field. Okay, we have congregations that we can talk to. The fact that we weren't able to mobilize that field, it's a mistake, it's a tragedy, but you are right. This is what needs to be done now. That every member of a congregation that feels, okay, I get it, I'll make sure that at least 10 people, at least 15 people from our congregation and others, you don't have to be affiliated with any shul, would vote. And of course vote Mercaz, because it's important because of the reasons that I described just now. And hopefully that message would resonate. Yes, please.
The conservative, majority, Mercaz, and the reform movements, the more progressive movements, ever formed a coalition or are even reformed and conservative views?
So we run separately because we checked it with focus groups, and I think rightly, that was my instinct too, that it won't make us bigger if we merge. We are different flavors of Judaism with differences between us, and those differences, it's not necessarily bad to celebrate them. We do cooperate. We do cooperate after the elections. We did it last time, and we'll do it again. Because together we are bigger as a bloc. And like 90% of the things we agree on. When it comes to Jewish pluralism, when it comes to issues of human rights, many things, we think alike. On some things we do not, and then we don't vote together, that is fine. But we are definitely better when we are together afterwards as a political bloc. So this is how we function. Yes, Rabbi Eisen.
I was going to say, part of the problem that people do not know about this is the lack of social media. And because I did my congregation a couple times, cycles, and I found that the last time I did it was much easier. And if you want to have an impact, you can very easily go to my webpage or my Facebook page, it's Robert Eisen, and you'll see I posted a link. I voted, you can too, and it's got a direct link to the page where you pay the $5, you can register to vote. Share it, copy it, do whatever you want. Don't attribute it to me if you don't want to, or put it on your own Facebook page and let people see it. Because that's one way of getting the word out, especially, in our generation. Because we're Facebook, not Instagram or X or whatever it is. So I would suggest you do that, and then you can get it out.
But I don't remember any rabbis from the pulpit, at least the schools that I went to, ever talked about it.
You should come to Tucson.
So another thing that we learned that at the end of the day, this time we changed our strategy. Last time we worked only with the clergy. We understood that the plate of each and every rabbi, and it's the toughest job in the world to be a pulpit rabbi. Okay, my best friends are pulpit rabbis. I'm not a rabbi, and it is their plate is always full. This is why we have captains in each and every congregation, lay leaders, that understand how important it is, that understand politics, that understand that politics is about numbers, And it will help us work within the pews in order to see that one by one, our hope is that if a congregation has 600 families, so at least one voter per family would be great. Okay, that is the ambition. Hopefully we'll get there. Now I have to run now to Tucson because in 2 hours we have another event there. This is how campaign works. So thank you so much for being here and enjoy voting. Yeah.
Okay. I want to say thank you very much for coming to Arizona and visiting. I also want to say that if you have not voted, Rob and Gail will help you. Bring out your phone, and they will help you vote right now. Okay? If you want to take that little card home, do it at home, that's fine. But if you want to do it right here, Rob and Gail can help you. Safe trip.
Thank you. תודה רבה.
Okay.
Debbie, is it one for